Investigate Part 5. Meat is the center of my meals. The top reasons against a vegan diet that meat is the center of my meals. Meat can have a disastrous multi-generational effect, promoting heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. But just how does meat and animal products do this compared to vegetarian and vegan diets?
But wait, isn't meat for athletes? For having a good physique and toned muscle mass? Good for babies and good for pregnant women? Here we have a table of maternal body mass index versus the time of death of your babies. The more obese you are, the shorter life expectancy. But why?
A randomized controlled trial of nutritional supplementation in pregnancy in a poor black urban population. The study was begun at a time when protein was just assumed to be deficient in the diets of the poor. Had they actually analyzed their diets before they started, they would have realized that wasn't true, but why let facts get in the way of assumptions? So they split poor black pregnant women into 3 groups and gave them an extra 40 grams of animal protein a day, basically a couple cans of Ensure, versus about 6 extra grams of animal protein, or no extra protein, and sat back and watched what happened. The high-protein group suffered an excess of very early premature births and associated infant deaths, as well as significant growth retardation in the babies that survived. More protein meant more prematurity, more deaths, and more growth retardation. And when kids grow up, animal protein intake during pregnancy has been associated with children becoming overweight later in life and getting high blood pressure. The offspring of mothers who reported eating more meat and fish had higher blood pressure in adulthood. This was part of another failed dietary intervention trial, in which mothers were advised to eat a pound of meat a day. The increased weight gain and high blood pressure may be due to the obesity-causing chemical pollutants in the meat supply, as I've talked about before, or the animal protein induced rise in the growth hormone IGF-1, or it could be due to a steroid stress hormone called cortisol. A single meal high in animal protein can nearly double the level of stress hormone in the blood within a half hour of consumption, much more than a meal closer to the recommended level of protein. Give someone a meal of crab meat, tuna fish, cottage cheese, and the stress hormone levels shoot up. But instead give someone some barley soup and a vegetable stir-fry and rice, and the stress hormone level goes down after the meal. Right? And imagine if you did the meat, fish, dairy, meal after meal, day after day. You could chronically stimulate your stress response axis and increase the release of vasoactive hormones that can increase your blood pressure. And all that extra cortisol release has been linked to increased risk for elevated blood levels of insulin, triglycerides, and cholesterol. If you take men on a high-protein diet, meat, fish, poultry, egg whites, and switch them to a high-carb diet of bread, vegetables, fruit, and sugary junk, their cortisol levels drop about a quarter within 10 days. At the same time, their testosterone levels shoot up by about the same amount. High-protein diets suppress testosterone. That's why if you take men eating plant-based diets and have them start eating meat every day, their testosterone levels go down, and actually some estrogens go up. That's why bodybuilders can get such low testosterone levels. It's not the steroids they're taking. If you look at natural bodybuilders who don't use steroids, 75% drop in testosterone levels in the months leading up to a competition. Right? Testosterone levels cut by more than half. Enough to drop a guy into an abnormally low range. It's ironic that they're eating protein to look manly on the outside, but it makes them less and less manly on the inside. And from an obesity standpoint in general, a drop in testosterone levels may increase the risk of gaining weight, gaining body fat. What does cortisol have to do with weight? Well, there's actually a disease caused by having too much cortisol called Cushing syndrome. And this is kind of a before and after in terms of abdominal obesity, which is most of that white. Even in normal women, though, chronic stress, chronic high cortisol levels can contribute to obesity. And if they're pregnant, high meat, low-carb diets may increase cortisol levels in the mom, which can lead to inappropriate fetal exposure to cortisol, which in turn can affect the developing fetus, resetting their whole stress response thermostat, leading to higher cortisol levels their whole life, which can have serious health consequences. It can stick with them their whole lives. And indeed, that's what they found. Every maternal daily portion of meat and fish was associated with 5% higher cortisol levels in their children, as much as 30 years later, though green vegetable consumption was found to be protective. Higher meat and fish consumption, like 3 servings a day compared to 1 or 2, was associated with significantly higher cortisol levels, but eating greens every day appeared to blunt some of that excess stress response. And the adult children of mothers who ate a lot of meat during pregnancy don't just walk around with higher stress hormone levels, but also appear to react more negatively to whatever life throws at them. If you put them through that Trier test, which involves public speaking in front of a panel of judges, followed by a live math exercise, here's the stress hormone responses in those moms who ate less than 2 servings of meat a day, versus about 2 a day, versus about 2 to 3 servings a day. Note before the test started, the 2 lower mother meat groups started out about the same, just walking around, but their exaggerated cortisol responses was laid bare when exposed to a stressful situation. Now, the real-world effects of this is that after that sort of test, if you give people their own private snack buffet with fruits and veggies versus fatty, sugary comfort foods like chocolate cake, guess who eats less fruits and veggies? Those who have these high chronic stress levels. Cortisol has been implicated as a factor in motivating food intake, even when you're not really hungry. So no surprise that animal protein intake during pregnancy may lead to larger weight gain for her children later in life, and maybe even her grandchildren. That's how much the stress axis can get mucked around. Recent evidence suggests that the long-term adverse consequences may not be limited to one generation. The diet of a pregnant mother may affect the development and disease risk of her children and even her grandchildren. Ultimately, these findings may shed light on a rapidly expanding epidemics of diabetes, obesity, and heart disease.
So number 5, meat is the center of my meals, and a discussion with your family and your family eating habits can be causing generational health issues. If you believe that this juicy T-bone provides your nutritional value for your day, and it will promote you to a higher athleticism, then let's take a look at the value of staple foods around the world, where you have the bottom value is plants, and the top value is animals. Diabetes risk by diet style. Vegans and vegetarians strike at the bottom there, whereas more meat you eat, the higher chance of diabetes you will have. Vegan power, some example of bodybuilders that are all plant-based here for you. These athletes around the world are breaking stereotypes that you can be strong and plant-based. But aren't all plant amino acids essentially incomplete and need to be combined? Let's listen to Dr. Greger's scientific explanation of the protein combining myth.
All nutrients come from the sun or the soil. Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, is created when skin is exposed to sunlight. Everything else comes from the ground. Minerals originate from the earth, and vitamins from the plants and microorganisms that grow from it. The calcium in a cow's milk and her 200-pound skeleton came from all the plants she ate, which drew it up from the soil. We can cut out the middle moo, though, and get calcium from the plants directly. Where do you get your protein? Protein contains essential amino acids, meaning our bodies can't make them, and so are essential to get from our diet. But other animals don't make them either. All essential amino acids originate from plants and microbes, and all plant proteins have all essential amino acids. The only truly incomplete protein in the food supply is gelatin, which is missing the amino acid tryptophan. So the only protein source that you couldn't live on is Jell-O. As I covered previously, those eating plant-based diets average about twice the average requirement for protein. Those who don't know where to get protein on a plant-based diet don't know beans. Get it? That's protein quantity, though. What about protein quality? The concept that plant protein was inferior to animal protein arose from studies performed on rodents more than a century ago. Scientists found that infant rats don't grow as well on plants, but infant rats don't grow as well on human breast milk either. So does that mean we shouldn't breastfeed our babies? Ridiculous. They're rats. Rat milk has 10 times more protein than human milk, because rats grow about 10 times faster than human infants. It's true that some plant proteins are relatively low in certain essential amino acids, so about 40 years ago, the myth of protein combining came into vogue. Literally, the February 75 issue of Vogue magazine. The concept was that we needed to eat complementary proteins together, for example, rice and beans, to make up for their relative shortfalls. This fallacy was refuted decades ago. The myth that plant proteins are incomplete, that plant proteins aren't as good, that one has to combine proteins at meals, these have all been dismissed by the nutrition community as myths decades ago. But many in medicine evidently didn't get the memo. Dr. John McDougall called out the American Heart Association for a 2001 publication that questioned the completeness of plant proteins. Thankfully, though, they changed and acknowledge now that plant proteins can provide all the essential amino acids, no need to combine complementary proteins. Turns out our body is not stupid. It maintains pools of free amino acids that can be used to do all the complementing for us, not to mention the massive protein recycling program our body has. Some 90 grams of protein is dumped into the digestive tract every day from our own body to get broken back down and reassembled, so our body can mix and match amino acids to whatever proportions we need, whatever we eat, making it practically impossible to even design a diet of whole plant foods that's sufficient in calories but deficient in protein. Thus, plant-based consumers do not need to be at all concerned about amino acid imbalances from the plant proteins that make up our usual diets.
As Dr. Greger has shown us, we require more whole foods with some high in plant proteins for optimal health. Here is his daily dozen, available inside of his book, How Not to Die, and on his YouTube and website, nutritionfacts.org. So we're squashing argument number 5, that meat can be the center of your plate. Just make it plants, and it can taste as tasty as your Nona's sauce. Here are the top 5 reasons for a vegan diet. Number 1, it's biological. Number 2, the vitamin dose. Number 3, it's a part of my culture. Number 4, plants are tastier than animals. And number 5, plants are the center of my plate. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, share it on your social media, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out my website at The Vegan Food Scientist.
The taste. It's always gonna be a delicacy, so lick your chops and eat the meat. Raising fear, bottle cap, distributed near and far, sold for a reasonable price. The people, they love it, they feed it, brush with it, bathe with it, breathe it, inject it direct to the blood. It seems to be replacing love. Why must we stay where we don't belong? Why must we stay where we don't belong? Don't belong. Because they're always gonna be talking truth. Forgotten code, discarded youth. You know there's always gonna be pedigree. One known the air, one paid to breathe. Why must we stay where we don't belong? Why must we stay where we don't belong? Why must we stay where we don't belong? We don't belong.